Hello everyone and welcome to another video with me, 320 Sim Pilot, and today a very quick video for you where we're going to talk about Contrails. They've been added to Microsoft Flight Simulator. I haven't really discussed them before on the channel, so I thought it'd be quite fun to have a look at them today, seeing as there is an occasion. As ever, I am a real world Airbus pilot, but none of this is for any real world use. It's just to give you some extra context on your home simulations. For this video, we are in obviously the A32NX in Microsoft Flight Simulator, and we're going to talk about what are contrails, why and when do they form, and what do we do as pilots about them. Right, let's get started. So here we are in our Manta A320 in the cruise, and as you can see we have the contrails pouring vapour out the back of the engines. These contrails are water vapour that has frozen in the exhaust of the engines, and that's pretty much all they are. They are a form of cloud, but they are obviously man-made, they're not natural. They tend to form when you have the right conditions of humidity and temperature, but that's usually higher up in the atmosphere where it's colder. So you're talking pretty high up once you get above sort of 25,000 feet. You can get them lower down though. I've seen them down in the low 20,000 feet as well. They are, as we said, produced by water vapour coming out of the engine, so it does depend on the humidity and all sorts of atmospheric conditions. They don't always form. And what happens is that water can get attached to impurities in the exhaust of the fuel, so sulfur particles, things like that, which form sort of a nucleus for it to turn into a water droplet, which then freezes, obviously, as it enters that very cold atmosphere, and you get this nice effect. Sometimes they stick around for a few seconds, like you see here. Sometimes they'll last for a few minutes, and they can even last hours. They become what's called persistent contrails. You'll notice one thing, which is I'm using real world weather at the moment, or live weather, and something I've seen in Microsoft Flight Simulator is it's not quite got the angle right. As you can see, they're forming straight in a line behind where we are tracking, but obviously we are actually at an angle because it's a windy day here in the UK today, so you wouldn't see this in real life. They would come straight up the back because obviously they're being affected by the wind as well. They don't follow your track. Quite a nice detail is this sort of the slight change in colour you see at the back. I like that they do sort of glisten, and you can see all sorts of rainbow effects and so on in them, because obviously they're up in the sun and high up in the atmosphere, so they've done a nice job on this effect. Definitely they seem to have gone for the sort of short style contrails that just don't last very long. Something else you might be wondering is, do pilots know when they have contrails? Is there any way for us to predict it? The answer to that is pretty much no. I'm sure some clever meteorologists out there can, but we pretty much just work on the basis of if I can see another aeroplane has them, I probably have them. It's not really an important part of the flight. You don't need to put much thought into it. It doesn't matter if you have contrails or not. But yeah, you can't tell. We don't have mirrors looking out the back. We can't tell the atmospheric conditions to that degree of certainty. Or we're certainly not going to spend time deciding whether or not they're there. But yeah, you'll just see other aircraft with them. There is one exception to that, which I did try to recreate in Flight Simulator. I'm going to try again now and see if I can make it work, which is the only time we can see it. Something we can do is we are in the cruise at, let me show you, we are currently at, or in the climb actually, sorry, climbing up to 35,000 feet. So we're at 32,000 feet at the moment. And it could be worth us just having a look to see when the contrails do and don't form. So we're in live weather. If I go to scattered clouds, there we go, you'll probably find that the contrails line up a bit better now because we don't have that strong crosswind. So yeah, that's something that hopefully gets changed later on. So there we go, we still have our contrails, and if you go down on the temperature, you might be able to adjust this. So the temperature at mean sea level, if I make it really cold, we've still got our contrails, but if I make it really warm, you'll see that actually that has an impact on ISA. So if you make the ground, if it's 40 degrees on the ground, you're seeing we're not getting contrails up here, so you need to have it a bit colder. Now, the reason you can see these sliders working together is because ISA is International Standard Atmosphere. So what this is referring to is the deviation from ISA. So at ISA, at sea level, the temperature is 15 degrees Celsius, 15, which is there, and the QNH is 1013. So what happens is, if you have a really warm day, then you could refer to it, let's say the temperature is 20 degrees Celsius on the ground, then the temperature on the ground is ISA plus 5. So let's go to ISA 5. Oh, a bit hard to get, or 5.5, there you go, and it's 20.5. So that's what it's referring to. Now, you've got to remember, in real life, things aren't this perfect. what you have is a variation. So as you climb, the temperature might be closer to ISA, so it might match it perfectly, it might go below it, it might be above it, but that's what this is talking about. So yeah, your temperature, obviously if it's quite cool on the ground, you're more likely to have contrails, and then if it's really warm, it could be that you need to be a bit higher up, or you don't get them at all. And there are days where you won't get them, it depends on, it doesn't have to just be cold or hot, it's humidity and all sorts of things related. I notice here you can actually change, oh no, that's just changing, okay, nothing too exciting there. Yeah, so there we go. So if we change the temperature at mean sea level, MSL, you can hear that engine performance changing as well. As we mess with the atmosphere. It affects sort of lots of things. But there we go. So you do have to have the right temperature. But if you're wanting to see contrails in your simulator and you're not getting them, it could be that it's just really warm where you are and you need to lower that temperature. Because we can see if we make it nice and toasty, they'll just disappear. So let's go to high level clouds. There we go. Often a sign with high level clouds that you're, if there is more humidity up there, there's a whole load of a lot of information that goes into meteorology that I'm not going to be able to attempt to explain. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this layer and I'm going to put the top of this layer just beneath us, 32,000 feet. Then I'm going to make its coverage 100% and remove its scatter. And we'll make it a bit thicker. There we go. Right. So, if we bring this up. So, you sometimes find yourself in these conditions when you're flying along. Sitting just above a big cloud layer. And this is the only time as pilots that we tend to see that we have contrails or not. So like I said, either you'll see other aircraft have them, or you'll be cruising along just in and out the tops or near to the tops. And what can happen is when the sun is right behind you, you'll find that let's just lower the tops a little bit. When the sun is right behind you, if you get it all lined up just right, you'll see your own shadow basically. But I have tried that in Flight Simulator and I couldn't convince it to work, sadly. As you can see, the sun is right up here behind us, but so I'd expect to see a shadow sort of just off to the right down here, but sadly it doesn't seem to be there. And I've tried a few different things, so let's just take up the autopilot and see if we can get a bit closer. But yeah, I haven't been able to do it. So in real life, you get a sort of haze and a effect, and you can see the lines coming out the back of your jet as you cruise along. Sometimes you can sometimes see it over the ground. It can be that pronounced. You might see the shadow of your contrails on the ground, or in this case, you'd see it on this cloud layer. It's not very clearly defined, but these clouds can be quite wispy, but they can reflect. Oh, sorry, they can give you some sort of a shadow. But as you can see, I don't think that's modelled in simulator, which is not a criticism. It would be a pretty fancy piece of technology and visual effects to have shadows from contrails and the airplane on these volumetric clouds. But there you go, in we go. So sometimes just at the last second, just as you arrive at the cloud, you suddenly get this big shadow of an airliner rushing towards you, which can be quite a strange feeling. But there we go, we'll get back up out of these. Some other curious things about contrails. You often end up flying through them. They can stay hanging around in the air for a while, and you'll be heading straight for one, and you'll go through it. And sometimes you get a slight bump, and sometimes it'll be completely smooth. I really have no way to tell exactly when there'll be turbulence left over in a contrail. You'd have thought they would be a sign of turbulence, because obviously they are a sign that an aircraft has passed through. But no, not always. Sometimes they are just leftover water vapour that by that point the air has settled, but they are still there. So yeah, that always surprises me when you zoom through one and it's completely calm air and you don't notice it at all. On larger aircraft, contrails tend to also give you a nice sign of the wingtip vortices. So if you're watching a heavy aircraft fly past, and sometimes they'll fly past at 1,000 feet above or below you, what you'll see is, because they sometimes have 4 engines, the contrails zoom out the back and then they start to swirl around because of the way the lift is generated by the wing, and you get this really big swirling effect. Not something we're seeing here, not something I've ever seen put into a flight simulator, so I'm not complaining. It's nice to have contrails finally added. But yeah, just a few little things about contrails that I've noticed over the years of flying. that's all for today's video then. I hope it's been of interest to you. Just something slightly different to look at, a little piece of aviation that's been added into Microsoft Flight Simulator. There'll be more tutorials, guides and live streams coming to the channel soon, so do please subscribe and like the video if you'd like to see more of this content. Otherwise, we'll see you again in another video soon. Thank you. Bye bye.